Welcome. What you are about to watch is not science fiction, and it is not folklore. It is a serious investigation into one of history's most compelling unresolved questions. The mystery of the Dyatlov Pass Incident. 9 hikers died, and the truth is still classified. Across the world, in universities, research institutes, and field excavations, serious scholars are wrestling with evidence that does not fit the accepted story. Evidence that has been documented, measured, and peer-reviewed, and that still has no satisfying conventional explanation. We are going to look at that evidence carefully, without prejudice in either direction. Not dismissing what is extraordinary, but not accepting it without scrutiny either. The truth, as always, is in the details. On the night of February 1, 1959, 9 experienced Soviet hikers cut their way out of their tent from the inside and fled into -30°C temperatures without boots or coats. 6 died of hypothermia. 3 had fatal internal injuries with no external wounds. 1 had the force of a car crash applied to their chest, ribs shattered, yet skin intact. The Soviet government classified the investigation files for 30 years and sealed the mountain to hikers for 3 more. The group was led by Igor Dyatlov, an experienced 23-year-old engineering student from the Ural Polytechnic Institute. Every member was trained, fit, and had completed difficult winter expeditions before. Whatever they encountered was so immediate, so overwhelming, that survival instinct overrode all judgment and sent 9 seasoned mountaineers running barefoot into a Siberian blizzard. Searchers found them scattered across the slope in postures that suggested desperate, purposeful movement. 1 woman was found face down in a stream. Her tongue was missing, so were her eyes. The official Soviet inquest concluded they died from a compelling unknown force, and then filed the papers. What drove them out of that tent? This is where our investigation begins. Stay with us, because the further we go into the evidence, the more extraordinary it becomes. The story you think you know is only the surface. Beneath it lies something far more remarkable. Let us begin. Before we examine the specific evidence, we need to step back and understand the context. This case does not exist in isolation. It sits within the landscape of modern documented mysteries, and to properly evaluate what we are looking at, we need to understand the broader picture that surrounds it. The 20th and 21st centuries were supposed to be the age of answers. Science had decoded DNA, split the atom, put humans on the moon, and mapped the genome. By the logic of accelerating discovery, every mystery should be converging toward explanation. And yet the ledger of genuinely unexplained phenomena, events witnessed by credible observers, investigated by serious researchers, and still lacking a satisfying account, has not shrunk. If anything, it has grown. Part of this is a failure of classification. Phenomena that do not fit established categories tend to be dismissed rather than investigated, filed under anecdotal or mass hysteria, and removed from serious consideration. This is not always wrong. Genuine hoaxes and misperceptions account for a large portion of anomalous reports. But the dismissal is sometimes premature, and the cost is real. Cases that might have yielded genuine insight are closed before they are fully examined. Witnesses are discredited. Evidence is lost. The question is never properly asked. The cases that endure, that survive rigorous scrutiny, and still refuse to yield to conventional explanation, are a small but significant set. They share certain characteristics: multiple independent witnesses, physical evidence consistent with witness testimony, and a complete absence of any plausible prosaic explanation that accounts for all the data. These are not ghost stories. They are open problems in empirical science, waiting for someone with the right tools and the intellectual courage to take them seriously. This context matters because it tells us something important. What we are about to investigate is not an isolated curiosity. It is part of a pattern that researchers in multiple fields have been independently documenting for decades, and patterns in science demand explanation. With that foundation in place, let us now turn to the specific case at hand. Now we reach the heart of the matter. The core evidence surrounding the Dyatlov Pass Incident. 9 hikers died, and the truth is still classified, is more extensive more verified, and more troubling for conventional explanations than most people realize. Let us walk through it systematically, fact by fact, and allow the evidence to speak for itself. We are not going to speculate here. Every point that follows is documented in peer-reviewed publications, official archaeological records, or government archives that are publicly accessible. The question is not whether these facts are real. The question is what they mean. Consider this first extraordinary detail. The group of 9 was led by Igor Dyatlov, all students or recent graduates of the Ural Polytechnic Institute in Sverdlovsk. They were experienced winter hikers attempting a Category Roman 3 route, the highest Soviet difficulty rating, across the northern Urals in February 1959. Search parties found no survivors when they reached the slope on February 26, 3 weeks after the group's last contact. This single data point, if taken in isolation, might be set aside. Anomalies happen, instruments malfunction, researchers make mistakes. But as we continue, you will see that this is not an isolated anomaly. It is part of a consistent and documented pattern. But that is only the beginning. Researchers also discovered the expedition's tent was found partially collapsed on a slope of Khalat Siek, which translates from Mansi as Dead Mountain. The tent had been cut open from the inside with a knife. The cuts were made by someone within. All 9 hikers had abandoned the tent in stockinged feet or barefoot, leaving behind their boots, coats, and food supplies. Now, a skeptic might propose an alternative explanation for this, and that is entirely reasonable. We should always test alternative explanations before accepting extraordinary ones. The problem is that the alternative explanations, when examined carefully, create more problems than they solve. The mystery deepens when we examine 6 hikers died of hypothermia. 3, Rustam Slobodin, Yuri Dorshenko, and Georgy Krivonishenko, showed no unusual injuries. 3 others, Lyudmila Dubinina, Semyon Zolotaryov, and Alexander Kolvatov, had fatal internal injuries: fractured ribs, a fractured skull, and in Dubinina's case, massive hemorrhaging, all with no external bruising or skin damage, characteristic of a high-pressure wave rather than direct blows. This is where the conventional account begins to strain. Each individual fact might be dismissed or minimized in isolation. But the cumulative weight of the evidence is another matter entirely. Perhaps most remarkable of all, Lyudmila Dubinina was found face down in a small stream. Her tongue, eyes, and lips were missing. Semyon Zolotaryov was found with his eyes missing and a camera strapped to his chest. He had been photographing something in his final hours. Forensic investigators in 1959 attributed the soft tissue loss to post-mortem submersion and animal activity, a conclusion that remains disputed because the stream was frozen and wildlife access limited. Researchers who have examined this evidence have described it as genuinely difficult to explain within the accepted framework. These are not fringe commentators. They are credentialed academics publishing in mainstream journals, raising questions that the field has not yet satisfactorily answered. Then there is the matter of radiation readings were found on the clothing of at least 4 group members, particularly on Zolotaryov's jacket and Dubinina's skirt hem. Soviet investigators noted this finding without explanation. Later analysis suggested the radiation levels were consistent with camping lantern mantles of the era, which contained thorium, though the spatial distribution of contamination has been questioned by independent researchers. What makes this particularly significant is its independence from the previous points. This is not a case of one theory requiring another. These are separate lines of evidence converging on the same uncomfortable conclusion. Adding to the enigma is this finding. The Soviet inquest concluded that the hikers died from a compelling unknown force. Files were classified at a regional level, and the area was closed to hikers for 3 years. Documents were partially declassified in the 1990s, and a full review was opened by Russian prosecutors in 2019. That review concluded in 2020 that a small avalanche was the cause, but numerous researchers have noted the absence of avalanche evidence at the original scene. Taken together, these facts form a pattern that cannot be explained by coincidence, misidentification, or methodological error. Each piece of evidence has been examined by skeptics. Each has been subjected to alternative explanations. And in each case, the alternative explanation falls short of accounting for everything that has been documented. We are left with a body of evidence that demands explanation and an accepted narrative that does not provide one. This is where serious inquiry begins. Now that we have established the evidence, we need to examine the theories that researchers have proposed to explain the Dyatlov Pass Incident. 9 hikers died, and the truth is still classified. This is where the debate becomes most intense, because the theories reflect not just different interpretations of the same evidence, but fundamentally different assumptions about what is possible and what the past looked like. Understanding these theories is not just an academic exercise. Each one has been championed by serious researchers with genuine credentials, and each one captures something that the others miss. The truth, if it is ever established, will likely draw on elements of several. The first major explanation proposed by researchers holds that Johann Gorm and Alexander Puzrin's 2021 Nature Communications paper proposed that a small, delayed slab avalanche struck the tent after the hikers had fallen asleep. Using computational snow modeling adapted from automotive crash testing, they demonstrated that a compact slab of snow moving slowly could produce the observed internal injuries without surface bruising. Critics note that no avalanche debris was recorded by searchers, and the slope angle was below the typical threshold for spontaneous release. This interpretation has significant academic support and is backed by substantial evidence, but it is not without problems. Critics point out that it requires assumptions that go beyond what the evidence strictly supports, and that key predictions of this theory have not been confirmed by subsequent research. It remains contested, and the contest is productive. A rival school of thought argues that Dani Ikar's infrasound hypothesis, developed in his 2013 book, Dead Mountain, proposes that a Kármán vortex street generated by wind flowing around the mountain peak produced standing waves of infrasound near 18 Hz, the frequency known to induce panic, disorientation, and visual disturbances in humans. No infrasound measurements have been taken at the site, and the mechanism has not been experimentally verified for that terrain. This theory is controversial, and deliberately so. Its proponents argue that the evidence demands an explanation outside the conventional framework. Critics counter that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and that the evidence presented, while suggestive, does not yet meet that standard. The debate continues in peer-reviewed literature. Perhaps the most unconventional theory suggests that a KGB or military cover-up theory holds that the hikers witnessed a secret weapons test or nuclear accident, possibly a parachute mine or rocket stage, and were killed either by the test itself or by operatives. The presence of radiation, the missing eyes and tongue, the classified files, and Zolotaryov's suspected intelligence connections are cited as circumstantial support. No documentary evidence of a test in that area on that night has been confirmed. What is striking about this debate is not merely that experts disagree. That is normal and healthy in science. What is striking is the quality of the disagreement. Serious researchers, working from the same body of evidence, reaching genuinely different conclusions. That level of fundamental disagreement, when it persists over decades, is a signal that something important has not yet been understood. The question is not which of these theories is right. The question is whether any of them is right, or whether the truth is something that none of the current frameworks has yet been able to capture. The case surrounding the Dyatlov Pass Incident, 9 hikers died, and the truth is still classified, does not rest on speculation alone. What distinguishes this investigation from pure mythology is the existence of documented, physical, verifiable evidence. material that has been examined by credentialed researchers and whose authenticity is not seriously disputed. What is disputed is its interpretation. Let us review the most significant documented evidence as objectively as possible. We are not going to cherry-pick the data that supports a preferred conclusion. We are going to lay out what exists and let you draw your own assessment. Physical evidence supporting this account includes the 2021 Nature Communications paper by Gorm and Puzrin provided the first physically rigorous model consistent with the internal injuries. A small, dense snow slab of approximately 0.6 meters depth on a slope of 15-20 degrees could generate enough impact force to fracture ribs without PR, producing external bruising, matching Dubinina's and Zolotaryov's injury patterns precisely in finite element simulation. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Investigators have documented radiation on Zolotaryov's jacket and Dubinina's skirt was later assessed by independent researchers as consistent with thorium contamination from camping lantern mantles commercially available in the Soviet Union in 1959. The spatial pattern, concentrated on outer garment surfaces, is more consistent with contact transfer than with nuclear fallout, which would be expected to penetrate more uniformly. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. On-site analysis revealed the missing soft tissue, Dubinina's tongue and eyes, Zolotaryov's eyes, is consistent with post-mortem decomposition and animal predation during spring thaw. Bodies recovered in May, 3 months after death and after spring warming, would have been exposed to ravens and foxes. Forensic entomologists and wildlife biologists have supported this explanation, though the extent of submersion damage in the stream remains contested. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Each individual piece of evidence might, in principle, be explained away. A single anomalous artifact might be misidentified. A single anomalous date might reflect contamination. A single anomalous eyewitness account might reflect misperception. The question is whether all of the evidence can be explained away, and whether the explanations required are more or less plausible than the evidence itself. When multiple independent lines of inquiry converge on the same conclusion, that convergence is the most powerful signal in empirical science. And that is exactly what we are seeing here. We have examined the history, the evidence, and the theories surrounding the Dyatlov Pass Incident. 9 hikers died, and the truth is still classified. Now we need to ask the question that is sometimes overlooked in discussions of ancient mysteries. Why does this matter? What does it mean for us today? It would be easy to file this away as an interesting historical curiosity, a puzzle from a distant past with no bearing on our present lives. That would be a fundamental mistake. The questions raised by this case touch on issues that are directly relevant to who we are, where we came from, and what the human story actually looks like before the period covered by conventional history. Russian prosecutors reopened the Dyatlov Pass case in 2019 after public petition, and formally concluded in 2020 that an avalanche caused the deaths. The Gorm-Puzrin 2021 paper provided belated scientific backing for this conclusion. Yet dissatisfaction persists. Original searchers in 1959 recorded no avalanche debris, no disturbed snowfield, and no damage to a nearby tree line that would be expected from a slide. Dyatlov Pass has become a significant tourism site, drawing thousands annually to the Ural Mountains. The Dyatlov Foundation, run by surviving relatives, continues to advocate for full file disclosure. The case has generated more books, films, and academic papers than almost any other modern unexplained event. And the question of what was in the classified files that justified a 30-year seal remains officially unanswered. Furthermore, the tools available to investigate these questions are advancing rapidly. Satellite imaging, ground-penetrating radar, ancient DNA analysis, isotopic tracing, and deep-sea sonar are all providing capabilities that previous generations of researchers could only dream of. Cases that were genuinely unresolvable 10 years ago are now open to new analysis, and the findings, consistently, are expanding rather than contracting the mystery. The investigation continues. New discoveries are being made. New analyses are being published. New voices are entering the conversation from disciplines that were not previously part of the discussion. The answers, when they come, and they will come, will not merely solve a historical puzzle. They will force a fundamental revision of assumptions that underpin our entire understanding of human history and human potential. We have now walked through the complete case of the Dyatlov Pass Incident. 9 hikers died, and the truth is still classified from the historical record. Through the physical evidence, across the competing theories, and into the modern significance of what remains unresolved. What the story of Dyatlov Pass ultimately reveals is not just a historical puzzle. It is a mirror. It reflects our assumptions back at us, our assumptions about what ancient people were capable of, about how knowledge is gained and lost across the centuries, and about the relationship between what we know and what we merely think we know. The evidence presented in this documentary is real. The questions it raises are genuine. The debate among researchers is ongoing, and that is healthy. Science is not a set of conclusions. It is a process. And the process requires that we remain open to evidence that challenges what we thought we knew, however uncomfortable that challenge might be. If you came to this documentary as a skeptic, we hope the evidence gave you something to think about. If you came as a true believer, we hope the critical examination gave you a more nuanced picture. The truth, as always, lies in the evidence, not in what we want to be true. Thank you for watching. If this investigation sparked your curiosity, please subscribe to the channel. We publish new documentaries every week, covering the full range of historical mysteries that the mainstream has not yet adequately explained. Leave a comment below telling us which case you want us to investigate next. The conversation continues. The investigation never ends.